Hi, everyone. I am Michelle Adams, and I am so excited about this month's guest. Before I go into who she is and everything about her, I just want to say thank you for all the support around the book. You can see Family Strong, 7 Gifts for a Lasting Legacy. And these Family Strong conversations are really meant to shine a light on just what does it mean when we talk about family legacy? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And as I've mentioned so many times, we think about wealth and power and influence. And while those things are great, honestly, when we talk about family legacy, it's those things that we're doing each and every day in those small moments that make a difference in the lives of our families. And being intentional about preserving that legacy for the next generation and then beyond. It really is more than money. It's about our thoughts, our wishes, our values, our goals, and how we're communicating that down to the folks who are coming up behind us. And so I could think of no better person, and especially because we are in Women's History Month, to bring on to today's Family Strong conversation than my friend. She's also my soror, the incredible, the dynamic, the fascinating. I can come up with so many other adjectives to describe you, my dear, but Simone Ross. So thank you and welcome to Family Strong Conversations.
Thank you for including me. I'm just so proud of you, and I love what you're creating.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's really important that we be thoughtful and intentional because legacy is a word that is thrown around so often. And of course, it means different things to different people. But I want to hear from you. When you hear that term legacy, what does that mean for you?
I think that it's evolved, right? Because it's interesting for me. So I'm a sixth, seventh generation Colorado native. And so my family were one of Colorado's first territorial families. And so my great grandfather brought the first jazz orchestra to Colorado, and he's got all kinds of fanfare and a park named after him and things like that. And then my grandfather, he was one of the first Black superintendents in Denver Public Schools, and first Black principal too ever in the school district. And so, my great grandfather's legacy was that of music. My grandfather's legacy was that of education. Then my grandmother was a political activist. She came here from Beaumont, Texas when she was 15. And she actually got turned away by DU's women's college because she was Black, and they were not expecting a young Black girl to show up. But then she got involved in activism and politics and getting some of our first Black judges appointed. And so her legacy is politics. And then my aunt was the first Black sergeant in arms under the Reagan administration. And so she went on to kind of take that legacy of politics. And so when you think about legacy, for me, it's actually like I spent probably the first part of early adulthood just wanting to be my own person and not wanting that level of, I didn't want the pressure. I wanted to chart my own thing. I didn't want to go into education. I didn't want to go into politics. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so it's interesting when you think about the concept of legacy, when you have the converse where you're like, well, I'm working so fiercely to do my own thing so that I'm not tied to that. I wanted my individualism in that sphere. And so, yeah. And then actually the whole concept of legacy for me was void of any of those things. I almost didn't want it. It was just like, I just want to live a happy life. And so I didn't think about it. And then I had kids. And so I'm like, okay, they kind of are my thing when you think about legacy. Like I want them to be great people. I want them to contribute to society. And that was it. But then something weird happened. I had a daughter.
Those girls.
Right. I didn't even want a daughter. Like we didn't find out we were having because I knew that it was a daughter. And I was like, I don't want that. But that actually helped me, I should say, mature into understanding like what my leave behind is. And so it's like, I, having been in the private sector for a long time, then starting my own firms and now doing some other ventures, what I learned was that for Black women, the world is really hard. on
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
We're not allowed to fail up. We're not allowed to fail. We get into work settings, and every piece of us that makes us unique, that makes us this coveted thing, right? Where people take pieces of our culture because we're just that damn cool. You get into the work setting and you're told your hair's wrong, your attire's wrong, your swagger is wrong. And I'm like, well, what? People have been swagger jacking us forever. And now I have a 9 to 5 and I'm sitting at a desk and you're trying to performance manage my magic out of me. And so, after having my magic performance managed out, I said, okay, my legacy is going to be that I'm going to do everything in my power to create corporate systems where Black women don't have to deal with the psychological trauma of becoming someone else every single day,
Who am
12 to
I?
16 hours a day. Yes, where I'm like, I'm going to do everything I can to create businesses where my daughter won't have to just deal with the identity issues and just the workplace violence that comes with trying to assimilate into a corporate ecosystem that tells you everything about you is wrong. And it's so wrong that we're going to performance manage it out of this company.
Mm.
So I guess that if I had to say like what is legacy, it's really like finding that thing, like for you, for me, where it's like, okay, I got to change this thing in the world and I got to do it in a really big way.
Ugh. I mean, there's so much to unpack in everything that you said. And I'm just like, oh, wait, where am I going to go next? But let me go, because I did a little snooping, or I'll call it investigative journalism. And on your IG page, I saw that you had posted a picture of you and your beautiful daughter on International Women's Day. And I forget everything that you put there, but when you mentioned your daughter and the fact that that wasn't even in your thought process of, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this little girl. The pressure from mothers, and Black mothers in particular, to get it right can be enormous. And let me see if I can pull up that quote real quick. But it was something that I've seen before about wanting to create this world where she can be her boldest, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, baddest self. But here, I'll give it to you exactly. Uh, it's cheers to bold women. May we raise them, may we support them and the brilliance of women, and let us cultivate future bold women. What do you feel that you are cultivating specifically in your daughter in this season of her life? Because she's still a little one.
Yeah. Um, you know, I think audacious confidence. Um, because I think that that's something that we, especially in Black women, we try to take from one another. I think the world does its part in it. I mean, I even think about there's so many things that we're taught are wrong about us, right? We're taught that our hair texture is wrong. And so we spent years and years chemically processing it. Then we go into corporate settings and people ogle and dehumanize us when we have braids or just even a new hairstyle, right? It's like, well, what is that? Let me touch it. Let me smell it. We're taught that our curves are wrong. So either they're hypersexualized or there's no picture of us. There's no representation of our beautiful curves in ads. And so we're taught that everything about us is wrong. We're told that we're too bossy. We're told that, you're aggressive. We're given all of these things where these are bold characteristics, right? From your physical attributes to these personality attributes that we're judged on every day and told they're wrong. I mean, I remember getting this whole list of things that I couldn't do, right? You can't go swimming because your hair's going to get messed up. Like you can't, talk about this topic. You can't wear this. You have to be this. And so what I've tried to do is take away those can'ts early so that when the world does try to say you can't, she's just going to be like, I've been doing it, so I can. And that's hard too, because sometimes it means you got to check family members, right? Like you have to say, I understand this children should be seen and not heard thing, but
Oh,
actually I want my child, especially my daughter, my little Black daughter, to have a voice, and I don't want it to quiver. And so that means that I see her and I hear her.
yeah.
And so, or just even getting rid of some of those old things that, my mom taught me, where it's like,
Mhm.
I got a call one day from my mom. She's like, "Oh my God, can Zoe play in the water right now?" And I'm like, yes, it's cares.
Right.
Let those pearls flow. I don't care.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that stuff for me has been, in adulthood, you have to break some of the bondage, right? And it's just generational stuff that's cast. And it's not bad. It's not ill-intended. We get generational stuff because, your parents and grandparents were having crosses burned on their lawns, and they literally instilled these things in us because they didn't want to get killed. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Novel idea, right?
Yes. But it's also unpacking that because it's trauma related, and just creating space for that audacious confidence and boldness, just to own every part of you, um, and not live to please anybody else, but like really live to figure out what makes you happy. And it's not defined by anything. It's like a feeling.
That, oh gosh, especially in particular, the part about some of the things that we take from our family heritage. And as you mentioned, a lot of it was protective, or they wanted us to look a certain way so that we would be accepted in mainstream culture. And one of the things I talk about, the last gift is the gift of possibilities, and it's specifically about our kids and the fact that yes, we need to allow them to be everything, to take up space in the room and to be everything that they were called and created to be. And similar to that thought about children should be seen and not heard, it's like, no, I want to hear you. Now, sometimes it may not be what you want to hear, but you know what? Out of the mouths of babes, right? And
A
we can,
100%.
yes.
Well, and then too, I mean, you have to dig into a lot of these things. A lot of it, we were brought up in a fear-based society. Even when you look at how we play out Christianity, right? Like a lot of it is punitive. A lot of it is fear-based. Like certainly you learn God is love, but then there's conditionality to that. And so too, a
Mhm.
piece of it, like when I think about like my life decisions and the route I went, like a lot of it was informed by some of those fear-based teachings that I got through Americanized Christianity, which was do this or you're going to hell. Do
Right.
this or you're going to anger God. And when you anger God, these
Then,
things, or
yeah,
this is like acceptable based on American Christian beliefs. And if you don't do this, your soul, your very soul. And it's like, well, and so a lot of those things too, when I think about just like my kids and how I want them to experience life, is I want to take away just all that fear-based living, and really cultivate a spirit of abundance,
mm,
where it's like, it's not, if you live this lifestyle, this is on the straight and narrow. It's really about like curiosity and discovery, and um, finding that strong sense of self, and understanding that we live just in this space of abundance where you can create income any way you want. Um, you can create happiness any way you want, and perhaps happiness isn't where you're married and you're doing this and that, because that's that fear-based Christianity. Maybe you have a life partner, and maybe you build your life in this beautiful, unique way that has no punitive repercussions if you go right instead of going left.
that is so true. And I think one of the best things that we can teach our children is to have that sense of curiosity, as you mentioned, to recognize that everything is not this kind of path. The path may go all over the map, and that's okay, because that's how you find out who you are and what you stand for and what your values are. So I 100% applaud that. And I know we talked a lot about your daughter, not to leave your son out there, because raising these young men too, to say, and I'm curious about that for you. How do you raise him to be someone who it who respects the role of the female and the woman and all that that embodies, because our young boys are taught a certain way of what manhood is, and perhaps a certain way to look at females and women. Is there anything that you're doing that helps your son to really look at things a little bit differently?
It's interesting. I call it radical transparency.
Do
Um,
tell.
well, I think we all, to a certain extent, put our parents on this pedestal. And it again creates, when you think about legacy, it creates this unreal expectation. And so I don't want my son to put me on a pedestal.
Yes.
I think that probably the most interesting thing that my children and both of I experienced was just going through my divorce. And I just really operated, obviously appropriately, right? But with radical transparency. I mean, when I exited my marriage, it's been almost 4 years ago. Um, it was a lot of things that I exited, right? And so when I left, I was not well positioned for success, not even a little bit. Um, my job had been eliminated. And so at the point that I was leaving and done, I didn't have a job. And then my children's father, um, he kept the house. And so I left the house. And so I had to rebuild that. I had like a little bit of money in savings, but I didn't have a trust. I didn't have anything to fall back on. And so, I mean, I had lost my job. I had exited my marriage. I had no home. And I seriously didn't know what was going to happen next. It was just really a thing of getting really connected to my ancestors and praying. And it was, I mean, it sounds lovely now, but it was one of the most scariest points, not one of, the scariest point in my life, aside from the fact that, you lose people like that you thought would support you. And then you have to deal with the stigmas. And then, we were a fairly high profile couple. And so that was awful. And so I think the biggest gift for my son is being very transparent and him walking me through that process. And I try to do it in a healthy way, right? Like where it's like, no, you're actually not the man of the house. That's not real. You're not paying any bills. And the reason why all these man babies are running around is because their mamas tell them they're the man of the house. But they ain't cooking, they ain't paying no bills, they're not taking out any trash. And so then when they become men, they're not doing that either, but they
Oh,
still want to be the man of the house. And so I'm like, no, I'm not doing the man baby thing. So you, in fact, are not the man of the house, right? And so at the point that you adult, and I made the decision to exit, I made this big adult decision, I'm going to deal with it. And so we can talk about the transition, right? Because their father lives in this beautiful 3-story 4,000 square foot home with a backyard. I took them, they had that at his house, but at my house for a year and a half, they didn't have that. They shared a room. You know what I mean? Like it was, and it was I enjoyed taking him through the process of watching me rebuild my identity. Because I didn't have any identity to hang on to. It wasn't the identity of a wife. It wasn't the identity of a vice president at a healthcare company. It wasn't the identity of taking care of this beautiful home. So he watched me recreate the identity that was mine, and we debriefed it, right? Like not from a space of weakness and being a victim, but just like, this is who I am. This is who I know God created me to be. And so I have to create that. And he's like, whoa, it's cool to watch you create that. And then when I opened a company, I took him with me, right? And I'm like, I'm literally opening a company, finishing construction on a building that I'd been working on and a company. And so he's with me the whole time, like, okay, well, we got to sweep this up because this is your building. This is your company. And then when I was able to, because I couldn't afford to purchase a home, because again, I didn't have a job. But when I was able to purchase the home, it was like, we're purchasing this home together. Like you're going to see like the sacrifice, where we can't do certain things because I got to put this $20,000 down on a home, not because I want this damn house, I could care less, but because I want to create parity for you, because I still feel highly accountable for the decision that I made to shake up the family. And so, yeah. And then it's like, okay, let's work through that guilt together too. Cause I feel right. Like this was a big decision that impacts me, but you too. And now you see, you know, your dad's life is great, but mom doesn't have much. And
Yes.
seeing that, and then seeing, you know, me build my companies when I went out to be an entrepreneur, and I built 4 companies, and he did that with me. And so he would manage my P&L, and we would do the books together, and we would talk about that. And we would just talk about like how that felt. And, you know, and he acknowledged like, dang, I've watched you over these 3 years completely build a new life. And he's like, and so for him, that's why I say just like radical transparency, because I think that that's super important. And I will catch him up too, because I think we get kind of caught up in our minds automatically, just because that's how the world trains us to be just a little bit sexist. Everybody is just a little bit. And so it's funny because he'll always talk about the stuff that his dad does. And then I'm like, excuse me? You are this way because of me. And so don't erase me from history. And so I'm like, don't erase me from your story, because I'm just all loving to you. Like, I'll still like chuck you in the throat. And so it's funny because now when he tells his story, you know, and something too is just like retraining him, because you always talk about the dad. And I'm like, you better give me my props, boy.
Yeah. Recognize. Yes. And I think, I mean, talk about radical transparency. And, you know, we didn't have any conversation beforehand. It was just like, okay, we're going to do this. And the fact that you share about your journey, I know that that is going to bless somebody else, because that whole man baby thing is real. And we have to move away from that for folks to recognize, no, I'm the person right now, and I'm the one taking care of you, but also to let him see this is what it takes to rebuild a person's identity, and not to let the circumstances completely derail you. Yes, we're going to get off track for a minute, but look at what I'm doing to get us back on and then beyond. Okay. Like I said, there's a lot there, and I really do hope that someone watching this gets that and will use that in some aspect of their life. One of the things you talk a lot about, or you talked about the businesses that you set up. And now let's talk about this transition, because we are in, again, Women's History Month. We just ended Black History Month. We know that this is 365, 24/7, but fine, we'll take the month, you know, when they allot the months. But you, my dear, achieved a very significant marker on this journey known as Simone D. Ross. Tell us about your new role, your new position, and again, congratulations to you because of the honor of being the first. But tell the world what you're doing right now.
So it's cool. I call it affectionately a divine assignment. And so I'm excited that the universe trusted me to take on this assignment. And then a large board of directors was like, yeah, we trust what the universe has put out for you. So I was appointed as the first Black CEO of the Colorado Women's Chamber. And it's exciting. One, it's exciting to know that this organization is ready to take that jump. We were founded in 1988, and there hasn't been a woman of color at the helm. And so it's good to know, right? Because we've been through so much just within the reconciliation of race in this country. Certainly Colorado, certainly Denver has also been met with some level of reconciliation. And so there's been a demand to let Black women lead, because we have had so many doors disproportionately shut to us. So whether it's, if you look at Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 500 companies, if you look at our access to capital in the venture realm, all of these doors have been shut to us. But what we know is that it is actually an economic decision to invest in Black women and allowing them to lead. And so it's exciting. I was not seeking this opportunity. I had my own corporate trauma to work through because I wasn't treated great in corporate America. But I call it a divine assignment because it kind of goes back to where we were speaking, where it's like, well, what is your impact? What can you leave what legacy you're going to leave. And so I think for this time period, because again, I think it is a divine assignment, that it really is to create new business architecture that benefits women, but that also sees women of color. Because oftentimes that intersection is left out of the conversation. We'll just blatantly say, well, the Women's Voting Act, women had the right to vote. And I'm like, did they? Because ain't I a woman? And I could. So let's change that. You know what I mean? So let's talk about that. And so when we say we have these women's initiatives, sometimes it excludes different identities of women. It excludes BIPOC women. It excludes trans women. And so just being a leader of color, a woman of color who had so much experience in corporate, I'm excited to bring that to the conversation and to be really thoughtful about how we create a workforce for all women.
Mm. Well, you are doing it, my dear. And I know that there is so much work to be done, but they have the right woman, the right leader at the helm of that organization, and the impact that you will have on businesses throughout the state, and I believe beyond, is still yet to be measured. And I'm all here for it and excited to see how it all plays out. As we start to wrap up, and there's so many other things when you talked about hair, the Crown Act, and I know you've been so much of an activist in that regard, and kudos to you and to others to help pass that Crown Act here in Colorado. But two more things for you. Is there a special woman that you want to shout out in your world for this Women's History Month?
Oh my gosh. A special woman that I want to shout out during Women's History Month. So I get a couple shout outs. I think I should get at least 5.
You have the floor. Go for it.
I mean, people don't talk about my grandmother enough. They always talk about my grandfather, my great grandfather, but I think all of us, like the women of my family, are badass. But when you talk about like keeping that name in history, like my grandmother is like the force behind any of our badassery, like Zoe included. So I have to always just speak her name and shout her out. She's 97.
Oh.
So she's still living, but I just think it's important to say her name, Marjorie Morrison, because she's a huge shout out.
Her name.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of amazing women who sponsored me professionally. And so that's like a clump of women to shout out. And when you think about advancing women in business, in order to advance women in business, you have to have women who are about advancing women. Like guys are okay. They'll hold space, they'll sponsor, they'll advance you. But it's about having women say, I see this woman and I want to elevate her, I want to amplify her, and I want to sponsor her. And so just professionally, starting from our soror, like Stephanie Hancock, who sponsored me into a role. And then, you've got like Jandel Allen Davis, who sponsored me into a role. Then you've got Kristen Blessman, my predecessor here at the chamber, who was a strong advocate for me in this role. I've got my board of directors. And so just professionally, there's a lot of women who have been incredible. And then you have like your sister circles. I mean, obviously my sorority sisters, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated.
Hey.
It's just a strong sister circle. And I pray and I hope for all women is that they have that network of sisters. And so we're tight. We have each other's back. I'm a part of another group called the Fly Ladies, and we're tight and we have each other's back. And the cool thing is just speaking other women's name when you are in spaces that they are not in. The SistaBiz network, we do that for each other all day, every day, is just speaking each other's name and just speaking life into each other. And so that's a big deal. And then certainly my auntie, whom I love, she is my second mom. She's amazing. And then certainly my mom. And so then I have an amazing best friend that we've been rocking for 23 years.
All right now.
And counting.
Yes.
And that, and that's interesting. We need to talk about that relationship. People think that they discount that best friendships are a relationship just as a marital relationship, because you live so much life to each other. So, and if you do it right, and so you do it right? I feel like if you do it right, you're going to have your ebbs, your flows, your ups, your downs. And you just gotta work at that relationship like you do any other relationship. And so I'm really proud of my 23-year-old best friendship. Cause it's not
her out.
Chevy Low.
Okay.
It's more than a Facebook post. And I feel like people out here, they forget that to have a friendship that lasts that long, it ain't just a like on social media.
No. This is, like you said, a lifetime. You have more secrets on you and your past. So it's like, okay, we got to keep rocking together because
Let's do it. And it's an investment. And
Yes,
so, you know, and for me, it's important that my daughter sees really healthy relationships
that's
with other
right.
Black women and
Yes.
understands that love and that care. Because sometimes as Black women, we need a little bit of tutelage in how to have healthy, positive, lasting, strong relationships with other Black women.
Mm, because so much you see from the other side in media showing fights and everything else. And yeah, that's not healthy. I will end it with a quote that I found that you said. It was in an article or interview, and I love this. Why be orange juice? Do you remember the rest?
Why be orange juice when you can be a mimosa?
Yes.
Yes.
I read that and I was like, oh, I absolutely love this. Okay. So, and to me, that means why just be ordinary and mediocre when you can put the zhuzh and the flash and all of that onto it?
Sparkle and effervescence.
Yes, yes. And that's what I love so much about you. You come authentically as you are, and you inspire others to authentically be themselves as well. Simone Ross, I thank you. I truly hope that others who watch this will get just something, a nugget, a drop, whatever it may be, that will inspire them on the days, months, years ahead. As we close out Women's History Month, as I mentioned, no greater person than to have on. Congratulations again to you, my dear, and all God's very best over you and that beautiful family of yours.
Oh, well, thank you. I love spending this
Yes,
time with you.
thank you, thank you. I know you're off to do other wonderful things. So until the next time, Facebook world and anywhere else that you're watching this on YouTube, the next conversation will be in a few weeks, but for now we are signing off. And if you didn't get your copy of Family Strong, get it, because a lot of the things that Simone talks about here, we cover in the book as well. So let's do this together and build a legacy that really means something. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Oops, okay, hold on.